region. I think as most of you are probably aware that it has been something we've been able to make available to all the churches of our Midwest region because of the contract that we have together that way. But then as a result of that, others have developed contracts regionally and otherwise all over the country. And so one of the questions that we've had is people are trying to figure out how the best ways to make this work for them is, who's doing what with this? How do I make this work in practical terms for me and my ministry? And Chris has used this a fair amount up in Wisconsin. And so we just asked him would he please take some time to share with the rest of us some of the ways that they have been using this. And so how it would be maybe some good ideas for you all as well. So we have one more person who has just joined us. I can't read a name. Grace and Peace.
Yeah, it's Benji Slayton. We just have a church account. I'm at Grace and Peace Church. We're a church plant in the Chattanooga suburbs.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that intro, Chris, I think we're going to turn it over to you, please.
Okay. And as I mentioned, I'm recording it. Not that this is something you're going to want to watch again and again, but if you know of anybody who might want to be able to have this overview, be glad to send them the file. So yeah, I'm Chris Vogel, pastored 26 years just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Had the great pleasure of working with Ben Sinnard for a good number of years. The director of the On Wisconsin Network, doing that for about 4 years. And in the last 2 years, started Next Gen Pastors, developing curriculum and models for pastoral training and development, renewal, what have you. My makeup that brings me into this is I really love gathering information. I just love facts, information. I also have a love of making connections with people and information. Put all that together, and I also like thinking about the future of, I see where we are, where we can go with things. So you put those three together. MissionInsite in some ways has been a little bit of a crack for me. I can go down a rabbit hole with this stuff real fast, which is not always the best thing. I have used it, been using it, and I don't know when we started with this, when Chuck Slater came to one of our Midwest gatherings.
I think it's been about 5 years.
5 years? Okay.
At least.
Yeah. And it's been helpful. And at the same time, I don't even use it to its fullest extent. There's so much here. But what I want to do in this next hour, and then we will have time for questions, but please stop me at any point if you have a question about anything. I'll be doing a screen share with that. But in a way of getting into this whole thing, what I'm going to do is pull the screen share here, and want to I'm going to be starting with right now with what I'm doing with Next Gen under cultural intelligence, working up a module about knowing your community and really using MissionInsite as part of that. Now, you won't need MissionInsite necessarily to do it. I'll provide a lot of the material, but kind of what we're doing here, and this is a little bit of the background before we start talking about it. When we talk about knowing your neighborhood and the importance of it, those two are a bit of a juxtaposition. If you're familiar with the SNL cultural reference, you'll get that. But in the module I do with this, I introduce this clip from Gran Torino, because this really speaks to why and how you should know your community. You may be familiar with it. It's now a 12-year-old movie. Of course, Clint Eastwood is Walt Kowalski. He's Polish-American automobile worker, widowed now, Korean vet, but his neighborhood is changing. And in this, I'm not going to play the full clip, but in this clip, you get a sense of knowing your neighborhood. So in that clip, if you were living across the street watching that and going to be doing some work in that area, it's the Highland Park area, just really in Detroit, you might have a sense of what that community is all about. But what would be interesting if you did the demographic work, you would see something very different. So here's what MissionInsite would tell you about the area. So I highlighted the area in which this movie takes place, knowing, of course, it's Hollywood and not everything is based on complete reality. But you would think, okay, this is it was a previously middle class, working class, blue collar, white, factory workers, and now from the movie, you get the sense it's a very mixed neighborhood with not just Asian. In this case, it's Hmong, very specific people group. But as you would go through here, you would see how they would, break this down. But what they'd show you is the largest is African American. So much so, if you scroll through here quickly, really look at the diversity of this area. In reality, it's 90% African American. It is only about a little under 6% Anglo-white, but the Asian is 1/3 of 1%. So you could have this image of what this is based on your own personal experience, your gut feeling, if you are actually living in that context. And it's in light of that, I think it's important for us to really begin to think a bit more clearly as to how we do this kind of demographic work, to really be thinking about it in much more clear and direct ways. And so when we talk about demographics, we're really looking at cultural intelligence issues. In light of this, if you're going to be doing a lot of demographic work, I think a great companion to this, just to do a shameless plug, is to do the IDI. You can talk to Ted and Ann about that. Because if you're going to be if you really want to know your neighborhood, you better know yourself and your own proclivities to issues of cultural intelligence. And the IDI is a wonderful tool along that line. Because my concern with doing demographics can often be we do demographics maybe to find the people most like us, where we're the most comfortable, or a place that might justify our own philosophy of ministry. And while we had better know ourselves, know our philosophy of ministry, we have to know the coherence between who we are and where we are, and where we are being called to flex, to grow, to develop in all of those ways.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
Can you say a word about what the IDI is, what that stands for? And I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. I'll turn that over to Ted and Ann.
Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, I think Charles has actually been through that with some folks maybe in his church there, Ben Reed too, maybe. But it stands for Intercultural Development Inventory. And it's a tool that we introduced to the assessment center, because the idea was to help our church planters become a little bit more self-aware of how they tend to process intercultural commonalities and differences. And so that as they move into their particular mission field, their target community, neighborhood, or whatever it might be, that they were much more aware of these issues of intercultural competence, where they stood on a spectrum from monocultural to multicultural perspectives, and therefore, hopefully through follow-up development and coaching that we would provide, people would become a little bit more adept at reaching folks who are simply not like them. Because what happens is we move into communities and basically end up reaching people who are just like us. And so even though we can't develop ministries or plant churches or whatever that reach everybody, we certainly can expand our parameters a little bit. And this was a tool to help us begin to move down that path.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So with all that said, let's move to MissionInsite itself. So when you log in, and again, the Midwest, we have access to this. Again, Ann, I think you'd be the one to help them connect with it. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so communicate with Ann if you don't have access, if you would like access to it. We've got contracts in certainly in the Midwest. I think there are in some other regions at least have had. I know Florida has in some other areas. Benji, you mentioned you have a church contract as well. I'm certainly hopeful we can keep expanding it to lower the cost and have more universality. So just you'd be logging into this next generation people view. If you've used it in the past, you're not going to want the legacy part. We're going to be going right into the Midwest. This will be the first screen you see, but for right now, I'm going to log out of that. So this is what you're going to see as you begin. Take out the information aspect. So here is the region for what the Midwest has right now at this point, and then you'll see all the churches that have been entered into it. It's not quite up to date. I was just checking Wisconsin, trying to update that, but we're pretty good on there. You have a couple different options of how to view the map. It's going to work like Google pretty much. That's not all that critical. There's some various layers that you have, so you can toggle on the churches if you like. You can see what the presbytery boundaries are over here under that. Likewise, I'll just zoom in a bit here. You can also identify what are the census breakdowns in any given community as well. You can do zip codes, school districts, however you would like to have that kind of breakdown, and that would be then all under the layers part. Along with that, shapes, we're going to get to that in just a moment as we do a search. The plotting part is really where there's an awful lot of power associated with this, because, for example, a fair number of our churches have entered in their congregations so that you can zoom in. And so I'm here in our area. Where are all the members of the churches that are in this area? Friend of Sinners, Christ Church, Trinity Presbyterian, and Cornerstone. And so you can zoom in here and you can see how this has been. This is not updated, but there you are in your house from where you used to live. And the plotting mechanism is really great because you can do a comparison. You can take your church in your community and overlay it and do a comparison analysis. How much does your congregation reflect the community in which it is? And that gives you a lot of opportunities to make those comparisons and what have you. But for right now, that gets you've got to download that information, and that takes you on a whole different level. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, let's take a look at a demographic study. This is where it is going to be the most helpful, and I decided to take a look here at Economawalk. This is where Ben Sinnerd's going to be planting. And so, here's the Economawalk area. As you know the area, kind of what are the boundaries. There are several different ways you can look at this, and your toolbar over here can give you different options. So if you wanted to do, let's say, just your basic radius, it is set for 2.5 mile radius. Then there are a couple ways you can do it. You can put in an address. So if you think this is the center you want to do, you could do it that way. It's going to do it here as a point on the map and just kind of click here. and then say, okay, if I draw a radius just from that point at 2.5 miles, that's what I have. And again, to have a good just overview of an area, you could start from there. Otherwise, over here, you can clear those things off. Other ways that you can do this kind of work is in drawing. Sorry. You can draw a polygon. It's going to stay inside here, maybe come over here a little bit, down to the interstate and over. And once you fix that, you can certainly make adjustments to it. Going to come up here and just make sure, maybe go a little bit above in any given area to grab some of the places over there, what have you. So you're able to play around with that. There are some other options, just doing a basic box. You can freehand it, but those are a number of the tools you can use to be able to identify the area that you're looking to do. You can also just do it based off of zip code. Again, the census tracts. Your opportunities really are rather expansive. Any questions so far with how that works? And again, you can, as you draw, you can just say, okay, want to do something different. So now that I've done that, I really should have kept something up there so I can. Okay, so say that's what I'm doing. So then the next thing you're going to be doing are the demographics themselves. So there are two options for you. You can do custom reports, and I'll talk about the quadrennium report a little bit later. But if there's just something specific you're looking for, you want to say, people, I'd like to see, the population enrolled by education, and then you can quick generate a report with that. And again, for a really quick type of report, that's fine. Then it provides just some of your basic numbers over here of where it's at right now and the latest report of 2019. So for something really quick and easy, I really encourage you to look at the predefined. It will give you far more information than you can really swallow. But once you get used to it, you begin to know what to be looking for. Again, if you're in the Midwest, all of this is free. So you're not paying for every report. For those of us that used Precept before, you spend a couple $100 on a one-shot deal. So there are several predefined reports. The Quick Insight, Executive, Full. Skip over the Comparative Insight. That's where you're going to be doing the plotting and laying over your people versus the population base there. Then a Ministry Insight, and then a Religious Insight and Priorities, which are a little bit more high level, quick overviews, the priorities are. So for the Quick Insight, here you're really getting both just an overarching story and what are some of the basic themes in that area. Executive, going a little bit deeper. You've got the story overview with 9 demographic indicators, the trend part that will show you what the 5 or 10 year outlook is for that area looking ahead, and then the theme views of the peoples, households, families, diversity, housing, work that's involved. Full Insight, you're looking at a good 33 pages or so. It can get pretty deep. The Ministry Insight, Religious Insight is based on, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
Were you, as you were, excuse me, as you were going through that sort of list of stuff, were you pointing something out? I couldn't see.
I'm sorry.
Anything.
Do you see the list of names here? Quick, Executive, Full?
No.
You might move your Zoom video feed a little bit over. It might be blocking that part of the screen.
On mine?
No, on Patrick.
Oh, on mine. Yeah. Okay. I see it now. You
Okay.
are absolutely right.
Yep.
Yeah. And Chris, as long as
Yeah.
we stop, just say like just a thumbnail kind of view for those things. A quick insight would be like kind of for M&A committee to try and figure out which site might be worth looking into. An executive insight might be where you think you want to target your resources, but you haven't necessarily identified a planter to go there. And then the full insight would be what you would want your planner to learn backwards and forwards.
Yes.
And then the other things just very, very helpful because they do show thoughts, priorities, concerns, not just demographics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the ministry and religious insight, and I'll be showing all of these for this given area. I've used the ministry and religious insights just even on occasion, but in the context of thinking about preaching, outreach, because I have a sense I know who I'm preaching to, who's sitting there, but I usually don't know who's not there, who I also want to reach. And so it expands my view of my community, which is very helpful. So jumping over here. So the quick insight, as you'll see, it's about 10 pages. As Ann said, it's just a really good, and so here's the polygon I drew for that. I left out Okachi and Oconomowoc Lake area, just because knowing, again, a little bit of from what I know, Ben, of the Oconomowoc area, you're talking a whole different socioeconomic area over here. Yours to some extent up on this part of the lake, but you get that story view. And so we're looking, there's good overview. Okay, there's growth. You will see a little bit of decline on school-age children, more high school growth there with school, as you'll see later. It's a very homogeneous community. There's not much poverty there, so they are below the norm for poverty, is what that's saying. And the largest group is white. And so this will give you the themes with some projection of where they see the kind of growth that's taking place. So looking to over from 2000 to over a 30-year period, you're seeing about a 7,000, 8,000 growth that's involved.